Alrighty, our next speaker is the wonderful Rachael Hurren from Inde Technology. Her talk is on neurodivergence in IT, beyond the stereotypes. And I'm excited for this one because this is a topic near and dear to my heart. I have several family members who are neurodivergent, so yeah, really looking forward to it. Rachael is the Director of Learning and Development at Inde Technology, an employee-owned cloud-based enterprise IT consultancy renowned for its technically led, outcome-focused approach. For the last 20 years, she has worked with organisations to build cultures and development programs that empower people to play to their strengths and excel in their careers. Holding postgraduate qualifications in psychology and education, Rachael is passionate about helping individuals understand how their brains work, what makes them unique, and how to leverage their strengths to thrive. Over the past 5 years, she has applied this approach to helping individuals and organisations develop a deeper, more accurate understanding of neurodivergence. Now, as with Annika's session, there will be an opportunity to discuss this topic in more depth after afternoon tea. So again, put those questions into Slido and then head along to the discussion session. So please join me in welcoming Rachael to the stage.
Thanks. I think it's probably a good opportunity for everybody just to stand up for a second, give your arms a shake, because it is the post-lunch session, and I know how you feel. All right. Feel free to sit back down when you're feeling slightly more alert. As someone who works in IT, why is it important for you to understand neurodivergence? Let's have a look. I want to ask you a series of questions, and I would love your help if you could answer the questions by putting up your hand. Now, you can answer as many of the questions as are true, but only put your hand up if you feel comfortable to do so. Okay, first question, nice and simple. Is there anyone here in this room who is neurodivergent and you don't mind people knowing? Thank you very much. Is there anyone here in this room who doesn't necessarily have a diagnosis, but they think maybe they've kind of read some things about neurodivergence, it kind of relates, they've always felt a bit quirky? Is there anyone in that camp that kind of, maybe? Cool, excellent, thank you. Okay, I can see a few faces also who are kind of thinking, well, I don't really know. You know, I've heard the words, maybe I feel a bit different to other people, but I certainly wouldn't want to claim something that's not mine. Let me take you on a little bit of a journey. Let's go back to when you're at school. Is there anyone here who would relate to any of these scenarios? Maybe you were the kid who you knew you had some good ideas. You loved working out how things connect, take things apart. You could never really sit still long enough to ever really put those ideas pen to paper. Or maybe you were the kid whose parents always heard the word full of potential, if only you could apply yourself. But you know, whatever was daydreaming about in here was way more interesting than whatever the teacher was talking about. Or maybe you were the kid at school who was made to feel stupid or naughty or lazy, but actually inside yourself you knew you were trying really hard. Do any of those apply to anyone here? Okay. And if we come back to the present day, is there anyone who would describe their life as if life was a video game? You just kind of feel like your life is stuck on hard mode. You're just doing the things you're supposed to be doing, your errands, your chores, and you see other people doing them and they're easy. Whereas you sometimes even just starting doing those adulting tasks is hard. Or maybe you feel like it's like life was supposed to come with a rule book or a guidebook, but you never got given it. And you see other people having conversations and it's like they can understand what the other person's thinking without even talking, and you try and join in, but you might as well be speaking another language. You think you're doing okay, and then you hear somebody say, well, that was mean, or somebody accuses you of being too direct. Do any of those situations apply to anyone here? Okay. Now, if we put all that together, is there anyone here who's just raised their hand for any of those? Or do you work with somebody who's neurodivergent, or you who suspect might be neurodivergent, or who, if you got to know them, you think would be pretty certain that they would answer yes to one of those situations? Can I get everybody to put their hand up one more time, whether you just put your hand up whether you work with someone who you suspect is neurodivergent or whether you haven't put your hand up yet, but actually one of those things related, can I get everyone to put their hand up one last time and keep it up for a moment? And now look around you. Have a good look around. Turn right around. As somebody who works in IT, why is it important that you understand neurodivergence? This is your why. This is why you need to have an understanding of neurodivergence. Okay. Neurodivergence, they estimate, is probably twice as prevalent in the IT industry as it is in the general population. Neurodivergent brains are different to neurotypical brains, and with that comes some specific strengths and some specific challenges. Okay. I've got another question for you. It's going to seem a little bit random, but just stick with me. Is it better to be left-handed or right-handed? Does it matter? Does it have any impact on the world, or is it exactly the same? Now, obviously, it's not inherently better to be either, except that we live in a world created by right-handed people for right-handed people. It's not inherently better either, is it, to be neurotypical, except that we live in a world created by neurotypical people for neurotypical people. You are not broken, lazy, or stupid. But you have lived in a world that hasn't understood your strengths or your challenges, and where it is easier to get annoyed at the left-handed child who gets ink on their hand as they write across the page than it is to realise that the ink on their hand bears no resemblance to the quality of their writing. As Jen said, my name's Rachael and I work for a company called Inde. We are an employee-owned IT consultancy, and with a difference, because we have a dual purpose. So one of our purposes is to work with enterprise organisations and help them achieve their goals by innovative use of technology. And our other purpose is to help all of our people become the best versions of themselves. My job is very securely in the second half of that purpose. My job description is to ensure that when someone leaves Inde, they're a better version of themselves than when they started. It wasn't long after I started working at Inde that my eldest son was diagnosed with autism and dyspraxia. As a result of this, it became evident to me how many of our people were also neurodivergent. But they weren't aware of how to let their strengths shine or how to scaffold their challenges. In effect, they were left-handed people trying to work with right-handed scissors. Okay. Now, I'm not here today to tell you what we did about it, and I'm not here to offer you a 5-step plan of how to make your organisation more brain-friendly. Why? Because every individual in this room has a different brain and a different role and a different organisation. And I'm sorry, but I don't have 100 tailor-made solutions just for you. But that's okay, because I understand that this is a conference about creativity. And so here's what we're going to do about it. I am going to give you a ton of information about neurodivergence to help you understand it beyond the stereotypes. We're going to cover some basic concepts to ensure that we're all on the same page. Then we're going to look at the strengths of neurodivergence, because if you can identify it, you can utilise it. And then we're going to look at the challenges of neurodivergence, because if you can understand it, you can scaffold it. Then we're going to do one final topic, which is a secret surprise topic. And it's a secret because I've realised that talking about this topic makes people uncomfortable. And so I'm not going to tell you what it is. Okay? Then we're going to talk about what's next. As I give you this information, though, I don't want you to try and remember it all. What I want you to do is look for some aha moments, okay? The things that I say that make you think, oh, that's totally me, or, oh, I wonder if that's why Bob does that thing that he does. And then I want you to take those aha moments, and the question that I want you to creatively consider is, what can I change in my workplace to make a world created for more people? Metaphorically speaking, what can you do in your workplace to provide left-handed scissors where currently only right-handed options are available? Okay. You recognise this photo, I suspect? The picture that broke the internet, or divided the internet, taught us a very important lesson, and that is the way one brain perceives and processes information differs from the next. This is what we call neurodiversity. All brains are different. Some brains can't tell the difference between green light and red light. Some brains think coriander tastes like soap. I learnt earlier this year that when you remember your favourite song or a memory, you can hear that favourite song or the memory in your head. There is no sound whatsoever in my mind or my memory. I went my entire life without realising that that's not normal. The way brains perceive and process information differs from one brain to the next. That's neurodiversity. Sometimes the way a brain perceives and processes information differs significantly from what we would consider a typical brain. And because of that, the individual experiences differences in their daily life. Okay. This is what we call neurodivergence. We group and label these differences so that we can better understand and communicate about the impact that these differences have on the person's daily life. Now, before we dive further into the challenges and the strengths, there is one last question that's very important to ask, and that is, are men physically stronger than women? This is not a trick question, and I promise I'm not going to report you to HR. Are men physically stronger than women? Generally speaking, yes, they are. Most men are physically stronger than most women, but not all men are physically stronger than all women, and just because somebody isn't strong doesn't mean they're not a man, and somebody is strong doesn't mean they're not a female. Okay? But generally speaking, it's true. The concepts that we're going to cover today are generally true of neurodivergent individuals, but they don't define neurodivergence. Just because somebody doesn't display them doesn't mean they are neurodivergent, or because they are doesn't mean they are neurodivergent. There is a saying, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. The concepts that we're going to talk about are what causes people's differences, but how those differences look in somebody's lives vary as much as their personality does. Okay. So now that we've covered those basic concepts, we're going to look at some of the strengths of neurodivergence. Now, every neurotype comes with different strengths. We don't have a lot of time today, so we're just going to look at the strengths of ADHD and autism. When things go off the rails and you need someone to swoop in with a creative solution and save the day, then you need someone with ADHD. Why? Because the way that the reward system works in a person with ADHD means that when a challenge is in front of them, they will rise to it. Things you are unlikely to hear somebody with ADHD say, that's not my job. That's not the way we do it here. Or, sorry, that's not due for 3 days and there's nothing I can do about it. They're much more likely to say, sure, I can help with that, and then work and work and work until it's done. ADHD brains jump all over the place, and when it comes to problem solving, this is a huge strength, because the more factors you can consider in your solution, the more creative and robust that solution will be. Today we live in an age where yesterday's solutions are not innovative enough for today's problems. But if you can harness the power of ADHD creativity, you will come up with solutions that keep you ahead of the game. And what's one skill we would all like people in IT to have a little bit more of? People skills. Imagine if your best problem solvers also had the energy and charisma to get buy-in from those around you. What difference would it make if you had just a couple more people on your team who you knew that you could count on to rise to any challenge, creatively solve that problem, and take those around them on the journey. How in your organisation could you better utilise these strengths? Autism. One of the first signs that somebody has autism is their deep interest in specific topics. If you talk to an autistic child about their interest in sea creatures or geology, you will be blown away by the depth of their knowledge and understanding. If you work with an autistic person with an interest in technology, then they will set a new bar as to what it means to be a subject matter expert. Autistic individuals tend to have exceptional memory, logic, and reasoning skills and attention to detail. This combination is a powerhouse when it comes to applied knowledge that is actually, in honesty, difficult for a neurotypical individual to compete with in either speed or accuracy. Another early sign that an individual is autistic is their difficulty with social norms. Now, this is a challenge, but in a workplace, it actually has some real strengths associated with it. That, again, can be actually difficult to replicate without an autistic brain. An autistic person isn't swayed by charisma or by intimidation. If what you're saying doesn't make sense and it's not logical, then they're not buying it. They don't judge anyone or anything by the surface, but they will only make decisions based on whether something or someone can do what it needs to. And they have zero interest in office politics. Where in your organisation needs some of these strengths? Okay, now we're going to move to a couple of the main challenges that are common for neurodivergent individuals. Executive functions and sensory processing. The first one, executive functions. What on earth are executive functions? They are a set of cognitive processes that help us self-regulate so we can effectively plan, prioritise and sustain effort toward our long-term goals. What does that mean? It is what you require to execute a task. Essentially, it is the skills that you need to get from wanting to do a thing to doing the thing. Executive functions are the secretary of the brain. They are what keeps you on track and moving forward. We are going to look at each of the executive functioning skills. It is going to be a quick fire system, I promise you this. But I want you to remember what I said at the beginning. I don't want you to remember everything that I say. What I want you to do is look for those aha moments. Do you recognise yourself in what I'm saying? And do you recognise other people in your world? Most neurodivergent people will struggle with executive functioning skills, in particular people with ADHD. ADHD is essentially a problem with executive functioning skills. Okay. You ready for some aha moments? Right, let's go. The first one is working memory. Working memory is the ability to hold something in your mind while you're doing something else. If someone comes up to you and says, once you've finished that email, can you please call Bob? Do you remember to call Bob? There is a saying amongst ADHD of out of sight, out of mind. Essentially, for someone with ADHD, if they can't see it, it doesn't exist. It's a very key hint when you're looking at ways to scaffold around working memory issues. Response inhibition. Thinking before acting. Do you get all of the information before you make a decision, or do you make your decision based on the first piece of information you get? Do you think before you speak? Emotional control. The ability to keep your emotions under control so that they don't interfere with what it is that you're trying to achieve. If somebody offends you, do you do something that you regret, or do you shut down and stay in a funk? Both of these are challenges with emotional control. Sustained attention. Your ability to continue focus on what you are doing and not getting distracted. If you do get distracted, how easily can you get back on task? Do you look for distractions? If you were doing focused work, okay, I'm going to sit here and I've got this report to do and I'm going to get this report out. And then 5 minutes later you're like, I wonder if I've got any emails. There was no need to check your emails. You've deliberately gone to look for your distractions. There's a challenge with sustained attention. Task initiation. Starting a task is a skill in and of itself. The ability to start something without undue procrastination. Planning and prioritising. When you get given a piece of work, how easily can you break that piece of work down and work out what steps do I need to do, in what order, to achieve that task? Prioritisation. When you get to work in the morning, how easily can you identify your one most important thing and do you do it? Organisation. Is your idea of tidying the house just gathering everything into piles everywhere, or sweeping off the table and throwing it into the garage? Organisation is about creating and maintaining systems to keep you organised. Often we really like creating systems of organisation, especially for other people. But can you create a system for yourself and maintain it? Time management. Now, I'm not going to explain to you what time management is. You know that. But there is another concept called time blindness, which a lot of people with executive functioning challenges have, and it is the inability to actually tell how much time has gone past. Has 10 minutes just gone past? Has 2 hours just gone past? It all feels the same, and it's what often causes time management issues. In the weekend, if you say to your partner, we need to leave for my brother's wedding in 15 minutes, and they say, yeah, not a problem, I'm just going to mow the lawns and then I'll get dressed. That's time blindness. Flexibility. When plans change, how well do you cope? Often today we call this the ability to pivot. If a rule is not followed to the letter of the law, even though it's in the spirit of the law, does that throw you? How flexible can you be in your interpretation of something? Are you okay if things change at the last minute? Goal-directed persistence, the ability to set a long-term goal and keep going with it. Do your goals change as often as your interests do? In a work situation, can you work out this is where we're going as a strategy and then keep moving there? Or is it, shiny thing, right, another shiny thing, now we're over here. And metacognition, thinking about thinking. Can you analyse your problem-solving abilities? Can you adjust your behaviour when you receive feedback? Are you aware of your strengths and your challenges, or do you just keep moving forward having no idea of what actually you're doing right and wrong? Now, these are the 11 executive functioning skills that your brain needs to get you from wanting to do a thing to doing the thing. Who recognise themselves in some of these? Yeah. You will all recognise yourself in some of them. We all have areas of executive functioning that we struggle in. But for neurodivergent individuals, they will struggle in most of these to a much greater level. What tools and systems can you put in place in your workplace to start to scaffold some of the difficulties that these bring? Okay. The next one is sensory processing differences. Now, our brains are bombarded with information all day, every day. Most of this information, our brains very kindly don't let it through to our consciousness. Until I mention it, for instance, you are not aware of the feeling of your socks on your feet. You're not aware of the air conditioning humming above us. And you're not aware of the people around you moving. Your brain goes, this information is not very important right now. You don't need to be aware of it, so I'm going to make sure it doesn't get to your consciousness. For a lot of neurodivergent people, all of that information gets through, especially autistic people. Sorry, lost a slide. When you imagine what would it be like to be in an office environment, you can hear the clock on the wall ticking all day long. Somebody at the desk next to you is tapping their fingers. Someone else is crunching an apple. The lights glaring at you. The smells from the kitchen are wafting through. You can smell it all. Every seam of your clothing you can feel against your skin. The tag on the backs are itching you. All of those sensory experiences, and you can't shut them out. How would it affect you? How would it affect your ability to communicate? How would it affect your ability to think and problem solve and to interact with other people? How are you feeling right now? Who would really like me to stop this tapping? It is overwhelming and exhausting to deal with sensory information all day, every day, and not be able to tune it out. What can you do in your workplace to lessen that overwhelm for somebody? There's two people in this picture. There's a man sitting there playing with a pen and a child in the background spinning around in circles. They are both doing exactly the same thing, even though they are completely unaware of it. What are they doing? They are regulating their vestibular system. Your vestibular system is your sense of movement. It contains your sense of balance, your sense of speed, and the pull of gravity on you. This system is incredibly important because not only does it help you know how you're moving through space so you don't run headfirst into a wall or fall off your chair, but it's also connected in your brain to areas of your brain that control alertness, focus, and emotional regulation. And that very clever brain of yours uses one system to regulate the others. Children use their vestibular system to regulate their alertness levels and their emotional regulation by spinning around in circles. Who's got kids and has just seen kids just spin and spin and spin or run backwards and forwards? They don't know what they're doing, but they are regulating their other systems. Why do you pace when you're nervous? Why do you tap your foot when you're bored? And why do you rub your hands together when you're nervous or anxious? You're using one system to regulate the others. Now, this system is the same for everybody. But because neurodivergent individuals are more sensitive to sensory information, the connection between movement and alertness and emotional regulation is more prominent. It's more obvious for them. The good thing about this, though, is it means if you can think of a way to help neurodivergent individuals when it comes to this, you will help all of your people. Here is a very easy example. Who here struggles with alertness in meetings? Yeah, right? You go into a meeting, they're not the most interesting. Start daydreaming, thinking about some other things. The reason for this is because when you're in a meeting, your vestibular system is receiving pretty much zero information. There's no speed, there is no balance, there's no movement. You don't move, you just sit. And so your brain cannot use your vestibular system to regulate your alertness and focus. Fidget toys. You would have seen them, you would have heard about them, you would have wondered, what on earth is all the fuss about? It's just another craze. They are a brilliant example of scissors that left and right-handed people can use. What you are doing is you're allowing somebody to move so that their brain can automatically regulate their alertness levels. If you have a way to move in a meeting, your brain will stay focused on the topic. They're a solution for everybody. Okay, now we get to the surprise box. The topic that people get uncomfortable talking about. Now, I believe that this is the least understood area of neurodivergence but I have a feeling for a lot of you it's going to end up being the most familiar. It is the area of giftedness. Now, giftedness is not what you think it is. It has nothing to do with doing well in school. Gifted individuals generally struggle at school, actually. But people don't like to talk about it because we all live in Tūpapa, New Zealand, and nobody's going to stick their hand up and go, I think I'm gifted. Everyone's going to go, cool, smarty pants. But it is a particular type of neurodivergence, and with it comes some incredible strengths, but also some serious challenges. So what is giftedness? Giftedness is asynchronous development in which advanced cognitive abilities and heightened intensity combine to create inner experiences and awareness that are qualitatively different from the norm. What the heck does that mean? I'm going to break it down, okay? Now, one of the most important things you need to understand the difference in giftedness is the differences in the brain structures. Children's brains are like sponges. If everybody's got kids, been around kids, you will know that they absorb all information without discrimination and then they hold on to it. They just learn everything, okay? Until their brain decides that that is not the best use of its energy and they need to use the energy to do something else instead, in which case it's a process called pruning, where they stop remembering and learning everything and they redirect that energy to the development of executive functions. Okay. In gifted children, this process is delayed by about 5 years, which means gifted children have an extra 5 years of absorbing all of the information that they come across. Gives them a much broader knowledge base and helps them create much more reasoning abilities and connectivity between all those concepts as well. But of course, their executive functioning skills are also delayed. This is what we call asynchronous development, which is when one area of development is advanced and one is delayed. You obviously can't see this in a child, but what you will see is something that looks like this. A 7-year-old with the math skills of a 9-year-old, but the emotional regulation skills of a 4-year-old. That's asynchronous development. Now, these brain changes remain right through into adulthood. So gifted adults in their prefrontal cortex, they have a larger, so physically larger prefrontal cortex with more volume and much more connectivity in it as well. This is really important because your prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain responsible for logic and reasoning skills. It is the area that you use when you are actively trying to solve a problem. When you are sitting down with a problem thinking, how am I going to fix this problem? You are using your prefrontal cortex. Gifted individuals have larger with more connectivity. The other brain area that they also have more connectivity in is the default mode network. Now, this is an area that is responsible for self-reflection and creativity. The difference in this area is this area only switches on when you switch off. It's an area of the brain that only works when you're not focused on anything. Okay. What it does is it takes all of the information that you have absorbed and creatively joins it all back together to solve a problem. It is the most powerful problem-solving area of the brain, but you can't control it. Gifted individuals have greater connectivity in this area, so they can use it easier. This is the area that you have to thank for that brainwave that you had while you were walking the dog, or the brilliant idea that you had when you're in a shower. On a complete side note, this is why scrolling your phones all the time is a really bad idea, because when you're focused on scrolling your phone, you are focused on something, and this area doesn't kick in. This only kicks in when you're not focused on anything. This is also the area that you have to thank why 11 o'clock at night sounds a really good time to start thinking about the probability of a multiverse. Okay. But if you put these two areas together, your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logic and reasoning and works when you are actively focused on solving a problem, and your default mode network that gathers all the information you know and creatively makes connections about it when you're not trying, that together gives gifted individuals advanced cognitive abilities. Gifted individuals are great big picture thinkers as well as understanding all of the details. They are systems thinkers. All day, every day, their brain is making connections between things. And they know that if we change this here, it's going to affect that. And if we change that, it'll affect that. We do this today, this is the effect that it's going to have in the future. Incredible problem solving and reasoning abilities, and you want these in your organisation. And if this is describing you, you will know that your brain does this. But these two brain areas together are also responsible for the heightened intensities or overexcitabilities, which are the 24/7 companion to gifted individuals. Get ready for some more aha moments. All right. So gifted individuals essentially live life with more intensity in the following 5 areas. Sensory intensity. Their sensory experiences are more intense. Now that can be a bad thing when that's the smell of the rubbish and it smells more intense, or those annoying noises that we talked about before and the drip of the tap is louder, or overwhelming sensory environment. But it's also a good thing when you're listening to the music that you love and that music is deeper and more vivid and richer and more dramatic than it is for non-gifted individuals. Or you're looking at your favourite art or your favourite scene of nature, and the sensory experience that a gifted individual has is more intense. Psychomotor intensity is a need to move. Because of all the extra connections happening in the brain connections, of course, are electricity. It's a form of energy and it has to go somewhere, which is why gifted individuals move a lot. They tend to pace a lot. They talk quickly. They move their hands while they're speaking. They often experience a need for speed. They can be competitive or they have impulsive behaviours. Imaginational intensity. Brilliant imaginations. The imaginations that are responsible for seeing that scientific discovery that is yet to be thought of, or for solving the problem that your organisation's been sitting on for 4 months and finally somebody's been able to put all the pieces together to solve it, or coming up with an entire creative world. I like to joke that all kids have an imaginary friend. Gifted kids have an imaginary world. They will have multiple imaginary friends, or creatures. Those worlds will have their own political system, their own laws, their own history. Big, big imaginations. Intellectual intensity, a need and a drive to think and analyse and debate and pull information together and reconnect it out. Gifted individuals often are workaholics, not because somebody's driving them to it, but because they love it. They would much rather spend their time thinking about how to solve that problem than hang out and talk about sport or something. They're driven to think and to analyse. And emotional intensity. This is often a sign of giftedness in children. I won't say that it's how gifted children are recognised, because often actually we just think the kids are emotional. But you see it easy in kids. Gifted kids are a delight to be around when things are going well. Nobody is more enthusiastic or appreciative or excited than a gifted child until something goes wrong, and then they are heartbroken, like despair. Gifted adults are the same, but of course by the time you get to adults, you've learnt some emotional regulation skills and you tend to hide your emotions a bit more. But as adults, the emotions still have that same level of intensity. The joy you will get from a relationship, but the heartbreak from when that ends. Emotions that are just next level intensity. And unfortunately, this means that gifted individuals tend to be prone to anxiety or depression and loneliness. So when you put it all together, giftedness is asynchronous development in which advanced cognitive abilities and heightened intensity combine to create inner experiences and awareness that are qualitatively different from the norm. So what's next? Well, that's in your hands. What aha moments have you had? What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about other people in your world? From the information that you've gained, from the few boxes that we've had time to unpack, how will you answer the question? What can you change in your workplace to make a world created for more people? How can you better utilise the skills of somebody with autism or ADHD? How can you make your workplace less sensory overwhelming? And what tools and systems can you use to scaffold the challenges of executive function? After the afternoon tea break, we're going to do a question section, which is based entirely on your questions. So any questions you have, whether you want to know more about what we talked about already, whether it's an area of neurodivergence that we didn't cover, put it in the app. And most importantly, if there is somebody in your workplace that you would like the opportunity to metaphorically offer that left-handed pair of scissors to, and you don't know how to do it, put it in the app, and we'll see if we can come up with something together. But for everybody else who's not coming to that second half, what is the one thing that you can do? Let's be kind to yourself. Remember that you are not broken, you are not stupid, and you are not lazy. The challenges that you have that you beat yourself up about, stop beating yourself up about them, because they are the other side of the coin from the things that make you brilliant, and you can't have one without the other. But what can you do to scaffold those challenges so that you can still let your strength shine? And be kind to other people. Never assume that you know why somebody does what they do. Being a good manager or colleague to a neurodivergent individual is no different to being a good manager or colleague to anybody. It is about empathetic, transparent conversations and a psychologically safe environment. If you've learned one thing from this session, I would imagine that it is that the brains of the people that you sit beside at work are different from your own. Why? Because we're all different, whether that difference has a label or not. So get to know them. Find out what are their strengths, what are their challenges, and how can you help. Especially those that frustrate or confuse you. Because if you can learn to work with people who are significantly different from yourself, you will exponentially increase the success of your organisation. Who do you need to create a world for that's more inclusive? Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. That was amazing, insightful, moving, so many things. I had a whole range of aha moments. A particular one, I guess it's personal to me, is that I am a crafter. I like to crochet. I like to cross-stitch, and I do that when I'm watching TV, because if I don't do that, I fall asleep. And now I know it's my vestibular system that I'm regulating, and I have a fidget spinner in meetings, and just awesome.